sorry to spoil it, but this might be one of the Christmas stories. It's called June, Christmas, and July. This year's party is going to be the greatest. Everyone will be impressed, June says as she wraps a strand of white lights around her palm, checking for knots and broken bulbs. It looks like a festive barbed wire, David thinks, as it twirls over and over. We certainly are planning big, David says, sorting through the boxes. He's looking for the good stockings, the deep red ones with the white trim. June hums a Christmas tune as she continues her untangling process. Beads of sweat gather at her hairline, and he thinks June should take off her red sweater, but it puts her in the spirit, so he doesn't say it. Their outdated AC unit fights hard against the onslaught of electrical lights and cookies baking in the oven and the natural July heat, even though it's almost 2 in the morning. They've been home for 3 hours, June's birthday barely over, but for the past 5 years they'd hurried home after her birthday dinner to take out the boxes and start decorating the house. June's motto was that all the best things should happen in the summer, Christmas included. It was a tradition that David indulged in at first, finding it charming. But he found everything about June charming then, her brown pixie hair and her 5-foot frame. They keep going until the tree is up and the boxes are empty and the first dozen cookies are cooled. They're sweaty and aching, but June is grinning. She peels off her clothes and climbs on top of him. It's the only part that David finds charming anymore. They met at a party in college. David was drinking Heineken in the corner with his roommate Paul and watching June move around the room. She wore a dress that sat high on her waist and tapered out to a wide bell shape. All David could think about was what she looked like underneath. "You're cute," he said in a mumble as June passed by him to get to the kitchen. "What?" June stopped and looked at him. "Did you say something to me?" David's pulse jumped and he shook his head and sucked down the last of his beer, hoping the moment was over. But Paul came up then and threw her arm around her and sang, "Hey, June," in a way that sounded nothing like Paul McCartney, and she smiled, not at Paul but at him. He thought that maybe she'd heard what he mumbled, so he stuck out his hand and said, "I'm David." "June," David calls out as he walks down their hallway. His socked feet are silent on the wooden floor. "In here," she says, her voice lingering from the spare bedroom, the room that holds their decorations 10 months out of the year. He hears the stitch of tape being stretched out, the sounds of paper being cut. "What are you wrapping?" he asks, leaning against the doorframe. "Your mom's gift." June keeps her focus on the gift wrapping. Her folds are flawless and masterful. "What about Dad's? Can we go get that on Saturday?" "Sure." She smooths her hands over the box, her fingertips gliding over the evenness of her work. David slips away from the door, back to their bedroom. He falls in the bed, lying motionless for as long as he can, listening to the sounds of the slicing scissors and ripping tape. The next night, David comes home, unbuttons his shirt, and sheds his pants. He wants to sit in his boxers and watch TV with the beer, but June told him that morning that they were going to watch Miracle on 34th Street and drink cider instead. So he puts on his red pajama pants that June likes, the ones with little L's all over them. He drinks 4 cups of cider during Miracle on 34th Street after spiking it with some leftover rum in the cabinet. He's pretty tipsy and June is curled against his side and the room is goddamn hot, too hot to breathe. The tree lights are set on a blinking pattern and they dart and glare across the screen. David tries not to care and keeps his hand on the small of June's back, her skin hot and damp. He wishes they could take off their clothes right now with the movie playing. He lets his hand move around her back and slides it up her side, brushes his hand against the curve of her bra. "Dave," she breathes, easing his hand off. She refused the rum when he asked her. Instead, she drinks her hot cider in her hot sweater in the hottest month of the year. "Do you remember our first Christmas here?" she asked then, turning her position to face him. "We sat on the patio in the freezing cold and drank hot chocolate, made a fire and talked for hours." "Yeah, of course I remember," he says. "I just want it to feel like that all the time, like this." She rests her head against his chest, her thick heat trapping him. "Hey, you should take off your sweater. It's getting pretty warm in here." "It feels nice though," she says, and David drops his hand, succumbing, closing his eyes and letting the heat take him over. June spends the next week planning the party, letting her preschoolers in summer class make these little red invites for their friends and family. June thinks they're a nice touch because they look like letters to Santa, and all David thinks about is how hot the house will be with all those bodies in it. The afternoon of the party, June goes out to pick up last-minute things, and she leaves a list for David. Light the candles, check that everyone has something under the tree, wipe down the glasses. She leaves a Christmas CD on the stereo, but David mutes it after she leaves and turns on a TV show. He grips a beer as he moves around the house. He uses a long-stem lighter for candles that smell like evergreen and like cinnamon and like peppermint. June buys them in bulk in January, when they're marked down after the holiday season. She complains that in July, all they sell is coconut lime and tropical sunset. David told her they should have bought air fresheners that mist the room, instead of something that produces even more heat. June calls when she's on her way home and asks him to preheat the oven so she can warm the casseroles and pies. The house quickly becomes a sauna, and David strips down to his boxers and flings his t-shirt across the room and stands on the back porch to finish his beer. He doesn't want to think about the sweater waiting for him, the matching ones that June found them at a thrift store for $2. He daydreams about buying another six-pack for the night, about the cool walk-in beer cooler at the corner gas station. When he heads back in, the house feels even warmer, almost burning. It must be something stuck on the bottom of the oven, but then he turns into the living room and sees it. The evergreen, the cinnamon, the peppermint flame, knocked over next to his flung t-shirt, knocked over on the floor next to the impossibly green Christmas tree. The flames lick at the paper wrapping, at June's smooth folds, and spread to the cloth sheet draped around the base of the tree. It's almost comical how fast it all goes up, the branches and leaves popping. David can't do anything for a long moment, frozen and watching. And then he thinks a million things at once. He knows June will be home soon, that she will see this and yell and probably cry. Then he can't help but think about how they knew that they shouldn't have candles, about how if he only didn't sling his t-shirt like that, how the heat consumed everything in this house. He chuckles a little because maybe he's sort of tipsy, but it is sort of funny. He should be getting a pot of water to throw in the tree to save what's left. He shouldn't be standing there laughing to himself and tipping back the rest of his beer, thinking about throwing the bottle into the flames. He knows he has to stop it eventually, but he can't turn away from the tree being taken over by the flame. He's about to move into the kitchen to get water when he hears June's car pull into the driveway. He thinks of her walking in and seeing him standing in his boxers with an empty beer bottle and watching the tree burn. He laughs, a little louder this time because he really can't believe it. Nothing has made him genuinely laugh like this in a long time, and his sides ache and his eyes tear up. He's even wearing his reindeer boxers, oh God, and the whole thing gets funnier. And the smoke alarm is going off, and the oven timer is beeping, and the doorknob is turning, and he laughs and laughs.